And then you will have to change your audio settings in Zoom. Already recording, by the way.
Oh. Oh my goodness, and I just made a face. Without further ado, I would like to present and welcome Professor Jenny Bowler to present this exciting session. Welcome, Dr. Jenny Bowler. Just give me a second.
Thanks, Amelia. It's wonderful. I think you are getting me confused with my father, who's a doctor or professor. I'm definitely not in that category. Just to make that clear.
Okay.
Yeah, so lovely to see you guys, everyone joining us this afternoon. And Amelia, thank you for that introduction and the acknowledgement of country here in this amazing country that we live in. You did mention that. Is my recording on? Which screen are we sharing here, Amelia?
Yes, your recording is actually on. It's recording right now as we speak.
Okay, I can only see the cultural infusion one. I actually would like to have a bit of a conversation before we start. So Amelia did say for people just to keep the microphones muted, but I'd like to know a little bit about some of you that are here with us, what it is that has brought you here. Is it that you are currently working with the ancient history area or using Lake Mungo in your classroom obviously for history and Aboriginal studies and cultural studies? So yeah, if we could just have a conversation about whether you're primary school, secondary school, you're here because you're looking for resources or you actually just would like more information to support your own curriculum. If somebody could give me some idea where you're up to with this story.
I'm happy to start. It's Timothy or Tim Ringwood. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great. Thanks, Timothy.
Oh, great. Excellent. Sorry, I don't have a camera on this computer. Otherwise, you could see me. But so I'm a secondary school teacher, and one of the courses I'm currently teaching is Year 7 Humanities, and we are just beginning our unit on ancient civilizations. And one of the things that the school is really trying to accomplish within that unit is, while we are layering in these new skills and historical understandings to the students and introducing them to concepts like, primary source analysis, secondary source analysis, and so forth, we really want to be trying to do that through an Indigenous lens as much as possible. So what we can simultaneously give them some more exposure to some of the cultures that we have here on our doorstep, rather than the entire thing being focused on the classics like ancient Rome and so forth. So I'm super interested to know, what you all have to offer, and to hear from everyone else as to how we might be able to do this in a really authentic way.
That's fantastic. This is such a worthwhile conversation to have, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Especially in that Year 7. I've been speaking with teachers for quite a few years now, and many, as you would know, all of you that are here, passionate about opening up the curriculum to bring in us Australian story. And as I've been around it for so long now, I think in the years to come, schools around the globe will be studying this story. We in Australia don't really understand. Many of us do. But just in the curriculum, in the education, in most areas, we really haven't been able to grasp the power of what we have here. So I'm hoping to share and inspire and lead you both to get excited about it, to give you resources to support you to do that, and to keep the conversation going. So thanks, Tim. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Someone else? I can't see many videos. So if we could just get in the chat, if you are a teacher, if you could let me know whether you're in the secondary, like Tim in the humanities, in the year 7 unit, which has brought you here, or if you're in the primary, it just helps me to get an idea where to focus. If you're here because you're interested in Mungo, you know, that you're welcome as well to explore this question, especially these issues that Tim has brought up. Year 7, I recognise some of you. I think Kylie and the school that was just secondary school. Kylie, I know we know each other from somewhere, don't we? A secondary school, but I'm a secondary, like Tim and teaching. I was supported to attend to run by Eugenia a couple of years ago, but this didn't run today. Myself and the year 7 team are with you. That's fantastic. So Sally, that's right. And Rob from your college. I recognise we've had contact with that college before as well. Yes, a couple of years ago. That's really interesting what you're saying, Sally. 2 years ago, about this time in March, I was set up to Merbeen. Okay, welcome all the teachers from Merbeen. I was set up to do these presentations, and COVID has gotten the, you know, has been part of our lives for the last couple of years. So here we are. Can you guys see my video? Yeah. Okay, I don't understand what's going on because anyhow, that doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'll share the screen in a minute. But what the Mungo Explorer curriculum, how it developed was, my father is Jim Bowler, who, as an earth scientist, he was actually a climate change scientist, amazingly. I mean, you know, I've lived with that all my life, and suddenly we're all talking about it. And a lot of what he's done, people are now talking about. So he's you know, my dad was sort of fascinated by these topics 40, 50 years ago, and he was out studying. He was taken to the area where Lake Mungo is to study the change in climate and the Ice Age period. And only a year after being there, he came across the what had been exposed through erosion were human remains, and therein lies this story that we're all talking about, Mungo Lady and Mungo Man. So, and it's since become, of course, a World Heritage Area, but we're still struggling to acknowledge it and get it into the curriculum and delivered to the degree that it needs to. I think what I'd like to preface is that how we've delivered and put this curriculum together, it really, it's deep work, and it's broad, and it is multidisciplinary. So you have the history, you have the cultural stories, you have in as much as non-Indigenous people can come close to them, you have the cultural record, the lifestyles of the ancestors. We have the science, geography, geology. We have arts. It's all embraced in this unit of work. I was very fortunate to find an incredibly experienced curriculum writer who, together with Dad's narrative and photos and all the work that he's done with the Mungo community, then matched his work to the national curriculum. So it's been written specifically for a year 4 units and year 7. And when I think you've all registered for free on the Learning Lands platform, you come to this area here. So you'll see that it's all in a scroll down page, the 2 units of work. And anyone that purchases these curriculums, you actually have access to both units of work. So for $360 for, I think it's under 200 students. I can't. I've been away for a little while, so I haven't looked at the pricing for a bit, but it's very affordable. It ends up being $3 or $4 a student for you know, this incredible history that's been done for you. So this is the primary area. The students are actually added to the dashboard. Through the dashboard, you add your students, and it's all Google Classroom integrated, so that can be done very easily. They actually have their own platform that comes up. This is a teacher one, but when the students comes up, it doesn't say year 4, it's first contacts. So the first contacts is the primary unit, and then down here we've got the ancient period, the year 7. So what we've done, Jackie Taylor and myself, we spent quite a long time putting all this together. So this work has been done for you guys, and schools that have started to use it before, we've been pretty quiet for the last 2 years because teachers and schools have been so overwhelmed with the immediate issues and too difficult to take on a deep body of work such as this. But I know lots of you are passionate about it. So we've basically done all this work for you, and then it's up to you. You can go in and essentially you can take units of work off here and add them to the curriculum that you've developed. But the ideal is for a teacher and a school to try and open up the space in their curriculum for the history, ancient history period. And I think I understand as we're heading towards this year and going forward, in the ancient history in the year 7, many schools are now integrating a whole term of Australian history. So we've done this work for you for 7, 8, 10 periods of work, weeks of work. So how it's laid out, if we look at we'll stay on the year 7. We've done the whole thing for you. So the first part of that ancient period is that overview section. And Jackie has basically gone with, there's 1 or 2 resources that we have brought in because of course Mungo doesn't tell the whole story. So the first 3 lessons are based on the video, and some schools have this video and use it, the BBC video out of Africa. So that whole overview period, which is relevant to your Greece and Egypt and all those other units that schools might do, can be done in these units. But you're doing it pre the depth study of Mungo. But in doing these lesson plans, we will see that this is what a lesson plan for the teacher will come up as. We'll see that Jackie's highlighted sections on the video that might eventually take us to the location of Mungo, how Mungo is related to the journey out of Africa. And, of course, this is a lot of work for a teacher to look at, but if you spend a weekend studying this body of work, that essentially will equal to, a semester of you going and doing an ancient history at uni. So it's in here, you're drawing on the expertise of both the scientist and the curriculum writer. So we then place Mungo on that big time, on that international, in that international story. And so the students are starting to see that it's climate change that makes, has people moving around the globe. And then Mungo becomes quite significant in all of that. Are all of the diverse Aboriginal cultural groups likely to agree with the statement made by Dr. Alice Roberts that she is convinced that all Australians are descendant from the ancestors who migrated out of Africa about 60,000 years ago, 80,000 years ago? So that's an inquiry question. And as students might start to do their research, there is actually a whole body of research out there that debates that the DNA is coming from somewhere else as well through Asia, not necessarily out of Africa. And of course, the Aboriginal cultural story is one that says that Aboriginal people have been here the whole time. So as you can see, it's already multi-layered in here. And Jackie is a very skilled educator in integrating Aboriginal perspectives into curriculum. She's retired now as a principal in Adelaide, both at public schools and Montessori schools. She had integrated Aboriginal perspectives for over 20 years in her across all of her schools. So she's very skilled in that. And we have embedded throughout these lesson plans that the Aboriginal pedagogy called the 8 ways of learning. So some people are familiar with that. It's quite well known it's in New South Wales. They use it a lot more than we do here in Victoria. I am using a computer here in the Culture Infusion office, and I'm actually Not 100% sure how to get out of here. Reza? Nope, that's not it. That's what happens when you're in Mungo sometimes. The world changes, the world view changes. Okay, just give me a moment while you can have a read of some of the material that's in there while I work out how to move the cursor back. Stop screen sharing. Reza? Okay.
Hi, Jenny, do you need any help?
Yeah, I'm not too sure how to get out of this page here.
All right. Oh, Reza's on mute, but he will come and help you now.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Thank you for being patient with us.
Yeah. Which one? Just here. Okay. Oh, thanks. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay. So in the year 7, the first 3 lessons are here: the journey out of Africa, climate change, and the human journey and human occupation. Then you'll see on the left here, we have a slideshow. So you have the teacher has a lesson plan, and then there's a welcome to country video that is linked to the actual Lake Mungo National Park website. And in here, we then have narrative from the scientists. Now, students very rarely get access to the scientists' work, and this is the source document you're talking about, Tim. This is his wording, and this is his journey. As the person that put Lake Mungo, the initiation that happened between human Mungo man and Mungo lady is what has created this World Heritage Site. And this is all here in his words. So the kids are following this in the footsteps of the scientists, and like my dad, they're being led to come face to face with the oldest ancestral remains in this country. So you're basically, as a teacher, you're taking your students on this journey, and you're obviously going on the journey with them. So it's very extraordinary. So you have the actual personal story here, and the unfolding of what has happened there. And of course, the conflict, science offended traditional belief systems, the ethics, the cross-curriculum priorities are embedded throughout this. The critical thinking, creative thinking, the ethics, and all of those areas that you guys are much more familiar with than I am. Mungo and the land rights movement, who owns Australian history. So you can see so many different inquiry explorations here, from the social, ethical, cultural. So I'm not going to keep going through all of that, but let's just have a listen. So you'll have the teacher lesson plan, you'll have resources for the teacher, because we're educating teachers as we go, because very few teachers have been able to study this area. Aboriginal history, and part of the issue I think we can all appreciate is that the history of the longest continuous living culture on the planet was passed on through story and ritual and dance and art and community and non-verbal. Of course, it wasn't written down. So it's the science that has gone in and been able to look at things in a kind of microscopic way that has now enabled us as non-Indigenous and cultural people to now step into this story. And that's why it hasn't been taken up in schools, because this area of the science has not helped. When we're looking at culture, schools will bring in the local elders or the Aboriginal educators to talk about and share culture. And that's been the dilemma for teachers, and so teachers have, as you guys would know, have very rarely gone into this area because of the fear around the cultural inappropriation and getting it wrong and offending people and all of this. So students haven't been studying Australia's incredible history. But now that we have the science story, it enables us as non-Indigenous people to take ownership of our own part of this story and get familiar with it, and then start to really appreciate the coming together of both science and Indigenous ways of looking at things, two-way learning, if you like. So let's see. Oh, I haven't. No, I'm not going to share. I'm not going to share this right this second. We might come back to some videos simply because I haven't clicked the right button to share it properly. So the layout is the lesson plans, the slideshow on the left, and on the student resource dashboard, they will have the activities here in these lessons, and then they have access to the slideshow. So let's go back to the first. This is how your units are. There's 4, the big picture. Then we go down into the detail, and then we're looking at climate change, and then we're looking at the legacy and the current day issues at Mungo. So people be very aware that to study Aboriginal history and culture and the longevity of Aboriginal people, that we tend to, from what I've heard with schools, and it's just the nature of education as it's been to date, people are looking at Mungo Man and they're studying carbon dating, and as you said, Tim, source resources and primary and evidence and significance and all those historical kind of thinking things that you have to cover off. But unless we actually get real about and get connected to the land and the story of the land, we're just looking at a kind of, bird view, a surface view. And Aboriginal perspectives is anything but that. I mean, we can look at their art and it looks like that. That's because they have such a deep, rich integration of the wholeness of the land, the life, the spirit, the animals, the people, the elements. And we're all struggling to find our way back to that, but not to reconnect with these things. So my father, as an earth scientist, has spent 40, 50, 60 years in this landscape, and his work is enabling us to start that journey. I mean, many of us have started it, but to complement what you're already doing. So we're going now into the archaeology area, and you'll see, I think there's 3 lessons here. So Lake Mungo Discoveries Challenge History, and each lesson will build on the one before. A guy called John Munro, I think his name is, who's a curriculum professor from Melbourne Uni, did say he went through the curriculum and he just said it was fantastic the way it built on a spiral curriculum, built on prior learning, but it also had the students going back and revisiting what they're learning and then reintegrating and reframing it. So this is a lesson format done for you. Now you can obviously, it can inspire you, or you can actually deliver it as it is or complement what you're already doing. But what I want to show you here is the resources that are involved. So there's study sheets are done, activity sheets have been done for you. Probably in every second lesson, there's an activity sheet. Jackie's coming from an inquiry-based model. However, especially if you were just to suggest to students to start doing research on Lake Mungo and look at a few textbooks and they see Mungo Man and carbon dating and 40,000 years, they're very limited in what they're going to explore with their inquiry question. So there's so much rich information here to begin that journey of what is an inquiry question? What do we want to look at here? So there's a worksheet on just how to look and gather information and start to explore what you do want to use as an inquiry question. And in here are areas of that students can start to focus on. So this is just that, we're only into about the 4th or 5th lesson here, and there's about 13 lessons. So what are the kids going to be focusing on? Ice Age, how did the walls of China or Mungo become a national park? What about the conflict of science and Indigenous cultures who had different perspectives? The removal of the human remains, how was that for the Aboriginal community? And what's the impact for the science community and for the global community? I will share with you as educators, you guys are really in the hot spot right now, because people from overseas, as you might find, often it's people that come from international backgrounds or visitors from overseas that actually really connect to the power of our Indigenous history and the extraordinary reverence for what we have here. And I know some people in America now are getting very interested in Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, and almost seeing them because they're 42,000 years old. There is no other ancestral remains that has a name. There's Lucy in Africa going back the beginning of, I'm not too sure, what is she, 110, 120, but that has a modern, that's so connected to us as modern people. Mungo Lady and Mungo Man were ritually buried. So the spirituality that's inherent in that is also explored in this unit of work. And a lot of teachers won't go into that because they haven't had the resources or have not been enabled to explore that conversation. But for Aboriginal people, if we're talking about Aboriginal perspectives, it's completely intrinsic to who they are, the interconnectedness of everything. So I'll show you a lesson plan that touches on that. But again, you can see, the ritual burials. Why were the remains of Mungo Man considered very significant? So this is really, quite deep learning and exploration that they're going on. So if we go into what I want to show you here, Tim, you talked about the science, and I'm not, as you can see, I'm not unpacking the lesson so much. We're going to give you an opportunity to get access to this material. I wanted to show you, let me exit now, I'm finding my way around here. There's another great kind of worksheet, the scientific method, for kids to start to, this knowledge bank is just sharing. I'm sure you've got all sorts of more creative ways of doing it, but just collating their research as they go through the unit. But applying scientific method at Lake Mungo. So this worksheet is a worksheet that's actually drawn from the scientist's, a real scientist's inquiry. So do you think that would be useful for your students to actually look at a method? You're talking about, source documents and primary documents, all that. The scientific method starts when you ask the question about something that you observe: how, what, when, where, why. What kind of questions would Jim Bowler want to have answered after he discovered the human remains? So that critical thinking and that all of this stuff is deeply embedded in this work. So you go through all that archaeology area. Now we go to the slideshow. So again, this is such a rich section. These are photos that my dad took. And all of this work has been done in collaboration with the World Heritage traditional tribal groups at Mungo over the years. So when you think of Lake Mungo and what it offers for your students, apart from Mungo Man, it's a deep time venture into Australian landscape and evolution. So we've got geology in there. It's the appreciation of the complexities of the changes of the land. I'm going to share a few units on the Ice Age. So we're talking about sequence and events and continuity. It's not just of culture, it's also of the land. And I was touching on that earlier on. It's the land stories, my father will say. It's the land story that actually tells the people story. So the material's in here to help support you get the students into the land story, both through the Ice Age and the elements and the erosion, and of course the artifacts that come out of that. But we have the timescales that go back 120,000 years or more in a couple of the graphs that I'll share with you. So let me just stop sharing, and then I've got to reshare, as you would all probably be very familiar with. Oh, I did push those buttons. And there's about 10 videos of Dad talking, and then there's about another 10 or 12 of oh, sorry. What are you doing?
When the lakes were filled in the period perhaps from 50, 40, 30,000 years ago, the vegetation was very different. There was water in abundance, even not just in the lakes, but also out in what is now the dry sand dune country. So people would have been living probably out in the dune fields where there were birds and the ecosystem was much more diverse. Then as the climate began to dry, there were plenty of trees around the edge of the lakes, there were fish and shellfish. So as the climate began to dry, then we see a much more intensive use of the lakes because people were coming in from the dry country, more mussel shells, more middens, more fish collecting. But it was, I suppose, a period of munificence. There was no shortage of food, birds, fish, mussel shells, plenty of vegetation, quite different from the land that met the early pastoral explorers who came out here in the 1860s and 1870s.
So if I was to ask you guys, and in the light of asking your students, what did Australia look like in the last ice age, which was 20,000 years ago? It was 20,000 years ago since Lake Mungo being a lake, a dry lake, was full. So what did Australia look like in that ice age period, in the coldest period 20,000 years ago on the planet? And most of us will think about, the woolly mammoths and ice everywhere and all that kind of thing. But Australia was actually, it didn't have much ice down through Kosciuszko and those areas. But because the ice was all caught up in ice caps, and it's in this lesson here, there was very little rain. If the ice is all, if the ice caps are so large and the temperatures are so cold, the rain is not happening. So Australia became a desert, and a really cold, windy desert, about 10 degrees colder than what it is today, and obviously a lot less rain. So once we start, what I'm trying to get to is a graph here to show you. Once we start getting the students into that story, and I've jumped a whole body of a whole section of the curriculum, I'll come back to that. But once we start getting them into this story of the climate, then when we're talking about Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, 40,000, the coldest period was here, 20,000 years ago, we're going back this way. Mungo Man and Mungo Lady lived 40,000 years ago. Apparently, even in Europe, I was looking at a book the other day, and people didn't even get to Ireland. They only got to Ireland, where my family's from, like 20,000 years ago. Modern humans weren't in Europe before Mungo Man and Mungo Lady were here. We start placing this story on the global stage, and what we have here is the most extraordinary story. We don't have colosseums or pyramids or any of those things that are fascinating for kids to study in Egypt, for example, or the Roman Empire, whatever. But we have a community of people. We have people, cultural people here that are still connected today to their history. And the fires and the rituals that were happening 40,000+ years ago are still happening today. These are communities that are interconnected with the land and with the natural world. That is an incredible story that is so powerful for our global community today. I'm sure you would agree. And this is what we're offering for you teachers, for teachers and for schools to start really taking into the classroom. So Mungo Man and Mungo Lady here 40,000 years ago, that ice age cycle, this is something my dad's mapped, goes back 120, 30,000 years. Was the water levels at the same as it is now, 120,000 years ago. And this, we have it on another graph, but this drop here from our current period back 20,000 years to this point is 100+ meters, over 100 meters in the water table drop, which was why why people were able to come to Australia, because it wasn't connected to New Guinea, but the gap was so much less. So across the world, 20,000 years ago, very few people survived that. I know a lot of schools, when they are studying sort of ancient periods, many of them have studied Iceman, and Iceman was 5,000 years ago. Mungo Man and Mungo Lady is 40,000. It's so hard, even just to do that exercise of taking your students through mapping out 40,000 years. So you can see there's a lot of graphs throughout this. This is actually mapping out the climate story, and I'll come back to that. Before we actually go into the depths of the climate story, we're taking the students through the archaeology. So what Jackie has done is basically with both the primary and the secondary, the first unit of work is the big story, the big picture. And then in the second unit of work, they'll start breaking it down. And this is an Aboriginal way of learning, telling the big story and then the overall story, and then breaking it down into detail and again, I showed that earlier. Where's the archaeology down here further? So we get through, I'll come back to some of those videos. But you can see in the lesson plans, it will start to direct you to what slides. So you can see the numbers of slides up here. So we're coming into the archaeology. Again, if we ask you, you know, what are fossils? Bones and stones. But at Mungo, we have about 5, 6 different types of fossils. There's the fireplaces, the 30,000-year-old fireplace, eroded and exposed still now, last used 30,000 years ago. I mean, that in itself is extraordinary to think and to start painting a picture of communities around that. And then for the historical learning, we're sort of starting to unpack the carbon, you know, why is carbon around the fireplace and how that helps with the dating. So that's about 5 or 6 lessons on fires as fossils. Then we've got the tools. So you know, students can be broken up into the different types of tools, be it fire or the stone tools, or you know, this is Professor John Mulvaney, who was the father of archaeology. He was, you know, you're looking at this on the ground. Of course, people can't get anywhere near this at Mungo now. Because it's protected, but that's what it looked like. The wind and the artifacts and the history just lying there. Shell fossils, the food, that tell the food story. The fish bones are in here. And there's they have every 2 years at Mungo, they had a student camp, and one group of, I think they were grade 5, did a whole presentation for an hour on the fish bones, on the otoliths that come out of the ear of the fish that record the dating. Examples of vertebrae and other small and often burnt fragments of fish bone are associated with otoliths, the stony calcium carbonate features that form in the ear cavities of the fish. So they used that when we had those big fish kills happening about 2 years ago. And in the dating how old the big carp were like nearly 100 years old, that's how they did it. So, you know, just the science that complements this natural history story is extraordinary. And this is about measurement. Then, of course, the human remains. So I think what I'll do now is just come back to, I'll move out of, there's many fossils and further exploration. We've got the Ice Age story that I touched on. And the final story is the impact on Aboriginal cultures. And well, of course, there was regeneration with it becoming World Heritage and people have claimed their culture. This becomes more of an effective learning, the emotional, the reconciliation, the metaphors, you know, thinking in a more abstract way to integrate their learning. And then the final area is, you know, what kind of project are the students going to bring together to really celebrate this body of work? And just what I recommend anyone that has access to the curriculum to do is, you know, jump to the last lesson, both in the year 4 and year 7, and just read what's possible with learning from Mungo. It's a journey of personal growth. It's an exploration of the antiquity of the earth and our people's history, awe-inspiring history. That the landscape has its own history, which has many lessons for us to learn from. The first Australians were at the forefront of human cultural development. What we have to learn today, human cultural development, they're the oldest ritual burials in the world. So that's a big story. What we have to learn from ancient cultures and their modern day descendants, what do we have to learn? and the importance of the people-land relationships, cultural reconciliation and enrichment, and the need for people, nature to reunite. So we have the food and the healing and the balance, the well-being and the spiritual beliefs. There's so much in here, guys, and it's really overwhelming to try and share this with you in 40, 50 minutes. But I guess the overarching question is, how can we improve our current life and the health of our planet by applying aspects of ancient wisdom? This unit of work is not just about studying a period 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 or even 40,000 years ago. It's all relevant today. It's relevant to appreciation of the incredible legacy of Aboriginal culture and Aboriginal peoples. It's pride in Australians to live in this country. It's the nature and our disconnect and our lack of values, you know, or a change of values, shifting of values, which is what's happening to so many of us right now. So an integrating of Aboriginal ways of learning, so much in here, be it deep listening, storytelling, all of these earth community connectedness, integration, Aboriginal ways of being. So all of this is here, and the students are really guided towards developing a deep understanding of the ancient wisdom in this country. So there's many, what we'll offer and what the Cultural Infusion is going to offer all of you is to enable you access for the full curriculum for 7 days. So today's Tuesday. I think, Em, you're going to, maybe if people want to put their emails in the chat, anyone that knows now that they'd like to access the 7-day free content, just drop your email in the chat and the team will pick it up. Otherwise, they'll be in touch and you can let them know via email. But certainly we'll give you access to 7 days, because you can see there's just so much to go in and explore. If we go in here, the lesson plans that are here and the student study sheet, in here we're talking about metaphors, because Mungo, you know, it just lends itself to poetry, to deep creative thinking. But that's a poem there. So that's encouraging students to start, you know, putting different language, expressing things in a more integrated way. I'm trying to find that lesson on the spiritual. I'll go back. So for the Year 7 teachers that are here, I've looked at the Year 7 because that's what I heard a few teachers are doing. But many, because this is a spiral curriculum, hopefully over the next few years, we'll be able to get this into a lot of schools. And the primary kids will have already done this unit of work before they get to the Year 7. So the Year 7 will build on the primary. But for a teacher just beginning to share this body of work, starting with the primary, and the students won't know any difference because the way it's written enables diverse learning, differentiated assessments as well. I'm not an educator, but I have come to understand that that's of great value to teachers, and that's what Jackie has done. So yeah, I've gone into the Year 4 unit, and again, any teacher or school that wants to purchase the resource, I would suggest definitely looking at the Year 4 to start with, because you'll probably find that that's where you'll need that there's more than enough in there to begin, and you can move between the Year 4 and Year 7 depending on what your curriculum's needing from you. But I just want to show you some of the lessons there's one of the lessons in there that is getting the students to look at things from different perspectives. So this is the farmer whose land it was, Albert and Venda Barnes. He was a sheep farmer. And my dad was out there doing this research on the lake, on the Lunette there, and the sand dunes. And he came across, you know, this history-making experience. And so the farmer had to sell his land. So the farmer has a perspective, the Aboriginal community have a perspective, and the scientists have, brought up. There's another sheet here talking about the impact of European contact. Of course, this is in the Year 4 unit, and we're essentially kind of having to talk to the curriculum, match it with the Australian curriculum, and in that area they're talking about first contacts. Well, this is the impact of first contacts, some of it, and Jackie has been able to deliver this. I've had principals looking at this concerned about. Are concerned about, whether their parents are going to be offended by giving too much, this deep information. But Jackie's done it in a really sensitive way, but she doesn't hold back. When this happened, the European settlers did not understand that the first Australian peoples were happy with their traditional lifestyles, living in harmony with their land, but this became impossible when the pastoralists stole their country. When this happened, the first Australian peoples had no option but to live on reserves and missions, so they lost their traditional happy and satisfying lifestyles and became dependent on others. Missionaries believed they were doing the right thing. So it goes on, and it's just a really well-written way of beginning to explore this in an age-appropriate conversation. I think you'd probably agree when you get a chance to have a look. Again, the lifestyles are in there. So what I'm going to do is just see if I can get a quick video up of one of the elders. The elders' videos that are on here were taken quite a few years ago, and some of them have passed on. But listening to these people from a long time ago has its own power. There are video links in the Year 4, in the 4th unit that are relevant more to today. You'll see things here like Caring for Country and the Youth Festival that happens out at Mungo. But let's go to Auntie Dorothy Lawson, who's a very powerful.
Sometimes we hold things back for the simple reason we cannot trust too many white people too, if you forgive me the expression. The thing is, we would like to get hold of it because there's a lot of things that we could take them out to do. For instance, we have stories about the skies. There are emus, the Southern Cross. To you, it's the Southern Cross, but to me, it means something else. And we could sit down and talk about it, but right now I'm not going to. But if children like to get out of the school and come to us, we will sit down out at Mungo and we will sit down and tell them the stories and what it means to us. I'm hoping that we could get buses so we can go out, because we haven't even got a bus. We can't, there's no transport. Sometimes we have to walk out. And walking out, we are trespassing on white man's properties and we are not allowed to go through them. It never used to be like that before. So I'm hoping that the school children will understand how I feel about Australia alone in itself.
So even just that short conversation from Dorothy is very powerful. So I know we're kind of running very close to time, if not over time now, and I really want to say thank you to everybody that's been able to stay with us. Reza's put in the chat, and people have been putting their emails in. So if people could open up their microphone, and let's just have a quick conversation for those of you that would like to. Have anyone's got any question for me at the moment? And if you haven't got any questions, I'd also be interested to really hear from some of the Year 7 teachers or the Year 4 teachers, whether you feel that while there's a lot of content in here and it feels overwhelming in this moment, whether this resource is something you think would be useful in your school. Hi, Sally.
Hi, I think that potentially it could be really useful, but I just would like to have a better look and play with it before I make a decision on behalf of the team.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to know is we consider like incursions at schools. Is that something that can be done?
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Whereabouts are you?
In Hawthorn.
Yeah. What school are you at?
At Bialik.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, that's something, and I used to do workshops, and I guess we're all just sort of, getting involved again after COVID. But as you've said that, I'm glad you mentioned that. Emma, are we able to get videos back up? Is somebody turn the videos off, or everyone's just turned the video off? If the other thing I'd like to offer is that I also want to offer a 2-hour deep workshop. So we've actually doing the incursion in the school is one thing, and Vicky Clark, who's been very big leader, an Indigenous woman across and some of you might know her in the Catholic system, has said that really we need to get this into the schools across the teaching and learning community, because there's so much in here. So, I mean, I will be putting workshops together as we move forward, but I'm happy to run something over these next few weeks, like a 2-hour session, to really support anyone that wants to start really looking at the resource and going deeper. So let's stay in touch. Cultural Infusion will enable you to have the 7-day free access, and in about 2 weeks' time, we'll put out another email and we'll schedule a 2-hour workshop. If one of you could let me know, what is the best time to do a 2-hour workshop for teachers? Is it on a weekend, or is it in the after school hours?
Here we do PL in the afternoons, which really only runs for an hour. So 2, I've got to admit, would be a little bit of a stretch for asking people to stay. It might be better if you consider like splitting it.
Yeah, but I'm talking about doing it online.
Yeah, I mean, if there was an opportunity to do it over like in parts, I think just, yeah. Unless it was, I mean, if it was 2 hours straight, it would have to, I'd have to consider as a PL maybe during school time. Yeah,
that's the thing. I think because you can see, Sally, that we really need 2 or 3 hours. I think I need to sort of put together a PL that'll obviously run through during the week, because we just need a chance to get into the work and support people in it. There's just so many layers in it. But for now, let's leave it at that. And please make sure you get a chance to have a look. I know we've given the 7-day pass to people, but you've just got so much on your plate. So get in touch with Cultural Infusion if you've had any issues, and I'm always available. And yeah, go in. What I would suggest is go through the slideshow and look at the videos and run through the slideshow. That'll give you an orientation of some of the material in there. And then the lesson plans are pretty much built around and complementing that area. So thank you, and let's just leave it at that. Thanks to the team at Cultural Infusion. They do a great job, and they're very supportive. And if schools can see the value and want to purchase, the pricing is on the website, and just send an email through to the team here, and you can have your students on board very quickly. So unless anyone else has got another question, Amelia, I'll pass it back to you to finish tonight.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jenny. I hope that everyone actually what did I say? Find that this particular meeting very comprehensive. And thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm so sorry that it ran a bit late, but there's a lot of things to actually discover. So please register on our website, and we can get free access to Mungo Explorer. And at the same time, someone was asking about incursions. So there's also the link on incursions, on Indigenous incursions that we provide. All we have to do is click on this brochure here. I'm just sending it through again, and we'll be able to help